All right, we're back. It's being recorded now. We are COMP3025, and it's winter 2016 semester, and it's week 5, lesson 5, part 1. We've just finished deploying, for the most part, our little calculator apps, to the devices we have, right? And we're changing directions, like we said. So one of the things we're doing when we change directions, and I'll make a little announcement later on for that to that effect, is we're doing Android development for this part, for the second module, right? Now remember, for your exam, which is going to be hosted not next week, but the week after, we will be doing a little iOS thing. So that's one thing. We have to probably stay in the room until that's done, right? So there's some pieces that I'm going to ask you to do a little app in class for that particular day. Right, and that'll be for your exam, week 7. Okay, but other than that, we're going to move into Android, into the Android world. And in order for us to do that, the first download you need to complete is Android Studio. Now, if you're someone who if you don't have a device, and you want to do stuff at school, the VM that I built that's in front of you right now, if you want to actually check out Android Studio, all the VMs that you have in front of you, they're loaded with Android Studio, and they have all the packages that you need to start doing Android development. Unfortunately, one thing that will not work in your VM is Genymotion. Any kind of simulator won't work on your VM, because then you're simulating a simulation, and that doesn't work. It's kind of like Inception. No, but it won't work, right? So it just our VMs they have limitations in terms of emulating an emulator, right? So they won't work. So, but the one thing is, you have to download this Android Studio. It's cross-compatible, so it'll work on Mac, I believe, also Linux and Windows. So that's pretty cool there. Rich was saying it's about a gig. That's fine. That's just one part. The other part, when we launch Android Studio, I'm just going to launch it from here so you can see it. And if you want to try this out, by the way, you're certainly encouraged to do so on the Mac in front of you, right? Man, somewhere in here, I may have Android Studio somewhere in my development environment, but let's launch it so I can see what it look like. And if not, I'm gonna show you on the I'll show you what it looks like in other places. So here's Android Studio. All right, so when you launch it for the first time, when you get there, finally download Android Studio, you might think you're done, but you're not, right? And it says plugin updates. A new version of Android Studio is available. Yours won't be like this, obviously. If you click configure, right, this is the next piece to this whole thing. And if I go after configure, you're going to have to go to SDK Manager. So if you were to watch this video later on, you can see what I'm talking about. SDK Manager will bring you all the SDKs that you need to download. Notice that there are going to be some more recent tools, and I'm going to show you which ones I have. My platform tools are sitting at 23. There's an update available to 23.1, so we'll be updating this in a second. Notice that there's 9 packages that it's asking me to download, right? Here's what you need. You need API. These are, by the way, these are different API versions. Notice that the latest version is Android 6.0, right? So since we got together last time, for people who did Java with me, there was no Android 6 when we were doing Java, right? Now it's there. All I need you to do is download the SDK platform. So that's one. So Android API 23. Please do not click every single one of these little puppies here, right? That would be very bad. It would probably be like 30 gigs of downloads, no joke, and it would take a long, long time for that to happen. All right, like we're talking about, you wouldn't be able to complete it in the time we have in class. It will not happen. There's just so many to download. So you need Android 6, because we're going to be looking at that as well. We'll be exploring that interface. Again, please choose Intel x86 Atom System Image. All right, this one. Also, if you notice, there's Google APIs Intel x86 Atom System Image, right? Where it says update ready. And Google APIs. Now notice on the right, see where this says not installed? I'm recording this so you can see it. I haven't installed them because I don't need them. I don't need the TV ARM processor, right? Because we're not going to do any TV stuff, right? Or the Android Wear. We're not going to touch Android Wear in this course. There's just not time. There's no time for that, right? So the only ones you need is the Intel x86 Atom System Image, the Google APIs. You need those, right? As well as your Google APIs for Intel x86 Atom system image, that one, and your sources for Android SDK. So those are the ones you need for each of the modules. As I go down, you notice that I also have API 22, so that's 23. API 22 is also there. Please install that. So that's Sdk Platform, right? You need that, and you also need the Intel x86, as well as the Google APIs and the sources for Android SDK. None of the other ones. If you choose any of the other ones, that's the pattern, right? It'll just take forever, and some of them you may be denied, right? Because there's some of these packages are not available for all systems. So I want API 22, API 21. I don't believe I installed API 20 because of the it's for other kinds of devices, right? So API 19, definitely that's KitKat. We're going to be using that one a lot to start with, 4.42, right? If you have an Android device, have you guys all updated your Android devices to the latest Android 6? Yeah. Okay. There might be people who haven't, and that's okay. But I'd like to try and work with the latest version. So if you guys are using Android 6, then I'm going to build stuff for Android 6, right? Is there anyone who doesn't have Android 6 on their phone or other device because you can't do it? What do you have? Is it because you can't go to the next version because your phone won't support it, or is it because it fails? Okay, so I don't mind doing Jelly Bean, right? 4.
What do we need? Can you list off what we need again?
Yeah, I'll tell you in a second. So I'll show you which ones I need, right? So things you also need you need some ancillary stuff here. Android support library. It says I'm not installed. I didn't include this as an extra. Notice that none of my extras have that in place. But I also included all the ones from Android 2.33, the oldest one. And the reason why I did this is because this is a good example of all the stuff you would need for every device. So every device or every API that I download, you need the Sdk platform, the samples for your SDK I'd recommend, your Intel x86 Atom system image for that particular API, as well as your Google APIs. Those are the ones you need. You don't need the others, all right? You don't need the other ones. Okay, so again, API level 10, I would recommend getting that, so we can test with that one. API 16, and I'll put these up on Blackboard for you guys later on. So API 10, API 16, API 17, API 18, API 19, because we're going to explore the difference between these ones.
Why are you selecting just one underneath that? Selecting just one.
No, that's not me. That's their update. That's telling me to update this thing, right?
What do you select?
The ones you want to select are the Sdk platform itself, right?
Platform tools.
Here, I'll show you. Which one are you looking at? 6? So under 6, you have the Sdk platform. Take a look up here. Under the API, Sam, not up here. Platform tools, you need those too.
Yeah, doing that.
But under your API 23, you need the Sdk, right? You need the Intel x86 system image and your Google APIs, right? As well as your Google APIs for Intel x86 Atom system image. And you need that for pretty much, or also one more is the sources for Android SDK. If you don't have that, then it won't work.
Okay, now what else? Platform 1?
It's the same, you need the same ones for all the other devices, for the ones that I'm going to mention, yes.
The Sdk manager on Windows is a lot different.
It would. Yeah, it would.
And there's a lot of stuff that that are on there that aren't on here.
There would be, but ignore the ones. The ones I'm talking about should be on yours, right? Those choices should be. Don't ignore the other ones. All those other choices, we don't want those other choices, right? Because it'll Jeremy, if you download that stuff, it'll just clutter your system. You'll never use it, and it'll be like gigs of downloads for nothing, right? So even the ones I'm doing, we're going to explore the interfaces so I can show you them. But I'm going to try and work with the latest version that you got up. So if you're using Android 6, that's where we're going to build stuff for Android 6. Why not, right? Because it's the latest and greatest, and it also gives us the most flexibility, believe it or not.
How many versions back are we going?
We're going to go back to version 10, API 10. So, but there's going to be ones that I don't want you to download. So, for example, so the ones I want you to download, and I'll put them up on Blackboard.
I'll have to install. I select all these.
Don't install every one, man. You'll just sit there. It'll take forever, right? So go back to API 10. API, which is 2.3.3, right? That's one that I want you to get, API 10. I don't want you to get anything to do with API 15, so please don't install API 15. Please don't install, install API 16, the ones we need. So that's SDK Platform again, the Intel x86 support, the Atom system image, the Google APIs, and sources for Android SDK. Those are the ones you need for pretty much every API you get. The other ones, like the samples and all that stuff, you really don't need them. Samples would be something you probably don't need. So even for my Android 2.3.3, I can probably get rid of my samples. Now, you might come to a point where it asks you, and again, I'll put the other ones in. So definitely install the latest one, API 23. And KitKat is the other one that's really stable. Last time we were doing development, I don't know if you guys remember, for the people that were with me on Advanced Java, that we did Android stuff, right? We had a problem with some of them. We would just crash the emulator completely, right? That might still happen, right, with some of these images. The ones that are really super stable that we can work on with our Android Studio is KitKat, Android KitKat, which is API 19, right? So please download that for sure, right? And the reason why I'm telling you to do this all, not here, but when you go home, is because it takes too much time. Well, we'll never finish. We'll never have a class in here. It'll take forever for us to do it, right? So please don't do that. Now, if it comes to the point where you've been doing Android before and you have your own laptop, as an example, right? And you get these updates, right? Notice how it says delete 8 packages, right, on mine. And it says install 9 packages, right? Even with the ones it says for me to delete and install, right? I'm not going to click delete. I'm going to click install. And I'm going to show you just for these packages that I'm talking about. There's not a lot. There's 9 packages here we got as updates. I'm going to click install packages, and you're going to see for your license, you have to go to the license piece where it says Android SDK license. Click on it and accept license. If you don't do that, it won't allow you to download anything. Click install.
Install right now?
Yeah. If there's an update.
Accept license.
Yeah, you have to accept license. So please follow along. On the machine in front of you, on the VM in front of you, you do have access to the Android SDK. I've already put it down. So click on, if you go to the development link on the VM, you can do this with me today, right now. I already set it up on your VM, right? If you go in there, you can launch Android Studio, and you probably need to do an update. I want you to experience this here, nice and safe in your VM, as opposed to doing it at home. And I'm telling you, it's going to take a lot of time. Notice that when it's downloading, I only have 9 packages, and it doesn't take. It's not a 2-second download. It takes quite a bit of time to happen. So please notice that that's the case. So while this is happening, you need something else. When we do our tests and everything else, our emulation, because we're going to emulate a lot, just like we do with our iOS simulator in Android with iOS. For Android, IntelliJ has provided an emulator, but it's pretty crappy, right? I'll be honest with you. It's pretty crappy from IntelliJ, and it's pretty darn crappy from Eclipse, right? So we use Genymotion. That's the one we're going to use. So let's find that. If I go to Genymotion,
Is it pre-installed on Macs?
I've already got it there, but it won't work because I told you it's a VM within a VM. In order for you to run Genymotion, right, you need to also, there's a package that needs to be downloaded for Genymotion. This is where it is, so genymotion.com. What it does is it also includes or downloads VirtualBox, right? So on the back end, it's actually creating a VM for your Android emulator, right? Which is actually why it runs so fast. It's way faster than any other emulator that we can use, either through IntelliJ or Eclipse. If you're tempted to use Eclipse, if you're an Eclipse person, I highly recommend, moving to Android. I know Android Studio. Eclipse was the way we did it before, and it worked nice. But Android Studio is the better way. It's the more modern way that we were starting to move towards that. And even the people at Android, Google, they've moved away from using Eclipse, and they have their stuff all on Android Studio now. So please, if you did it on Eclipse before and you have some stuff from before, let's move towards Android Studio. Okay, so we download Genymotion like this. We go to, now it's not free necessarily, but we can try it out. So if I go to pricing, notice that there is pricing for business. If I go to individual, right, your basic usage, right, is free. So you can download, get started, right, and you can sign in as an example. And every time you sign into Genymotion, you can sign in and use and set up a virtual device, right? Or luckily, again, I have some of this stuff. I may have had Genymotion installed for you on your on the machine in front of you. It unfortunately may not work because, like I said, you need to virtualize a virtualization, and that just won't work properly. But Android Studio will work, and this is where I want to kind of explore that a little bit today before we go. So Genymotion, again, for those people who want to see it, I'm going to bring it up. Here it is. It kind of looks like this when you download it, Genymotion, right? For personal use. Notice that it may ask you to log in, but if I want to start up a device, and I got a couple of devices, one on KitKat 4.22 and another one that's running Nexus 5 on 5.10. If I click Start, what it's going to do is it's going to grab VirtualBox and kick off a virtualization of the device, and it's pretty darn quick, right? So when it comes up, I mean, it's up. I'm ready to go, right? And that's way faster than it would have been when we did Android with Eclipse without Genymotion. So please, Genymotion is something that we need to download and install. There is a plugin for Genymotion for Android Studio. So it's not going to be automatic that you can use it. I'm just going to go there to that plugin. So if I go Genymotion plugin for Android Studio, right? If I click on this, the JetBrains plugin repository, it'll tell you what to do, right? Within how to set up your Genymotion for your Android Studio. If I actually go back to Android Studio, I believe it's all through here. So I'll go back, and I think there is on. I'm wondering if it's plugin configure again, but I think it's plugins. Here it is, plugins. If you go to plugins, notice that I have my Genymotion plugin configured and installed, right? So you need to do that. If you don't have your Genymotion plugin, then Genymotion won't launch, right? That's bad. So please follow the instructions. Go to Google. You can find out there's some simple instructions how to download. After you've downloaded Genymotion, you need to get this going in order for you to get your plugin going, right? So far we've talked about 3 pieces just to set up our environment. We need those 3 things: Android Studio. You need to have your packages, the APIs that I'm going to list on Blackboard later on today. You need Genymotion for us to test properly, right? And of course, you need Java. If you don't have Java, you can't do any of this stuff. So the latest version of Java is Java 8. I recommend the latest SDK, right?
When you install Android Studio,
It'll tell you.
If you don't have Java,
Yeah.
it'll stop and it'll say you can't continue until you
Yeah.
install Java.
So that's the pieces that you need, right? So we'll cancel this and go back. So in Android Studio, if I want to kick off a new project, so I'm just going to close all this down for a second. Well, I better not. I'll minimize it. So if I want to kick off a new project, you'll notice that I have Genymotion running here, which is cool. I can just have it in the background. So this is what the emulator would look like, right? And again, this is running one of my my apps. I can choose. Just it looks like it'll respond pretty much just like a a device, right? Now it might be a little quicker, but because I'm using acceleration, it looks like it might be even quicker than this one. There's the calculator that comes with Android, right? 9 times 3, right? Which is pretty cool. So everything else, the actual device works nicely and everything else. But let's launch a new Android Studio project to check this out. So here's my launching a new project. And for those of you, if you want to follow along, you got Android Studio in front of you on the Mac in front of you, right? Because I remember I told you I installed it in your VM. So if you've got your VM kicked off, you can follow along with me, right? So my application name, we're just going to make it a kind of welcome, a welcome app, just like we did today. We're going to click next. And notice that I have to target a particular SDK. Now, the one I've got going on, Android 4.4, you have to have these SDKs installed, and I believe I've already installed a bunch of these SDKs for you on your machine, the machine in front of you, right? Marshmallow is the one that's newer, right? Now mine's being updated. I'm just going to choose KitKat for now, right? So that way it runs, API 19. Remember I told you, KitKat is one of the most stable APIs that we have, believe it or not. Even though we're at version 6, KitKat crashes less often, right? All right, let's go to the next one. So we click Next. And now we decide from a template, just like we did on the Mac, for what kind of application we want to run. We want to run a full screen activity, a blank activity. These things are called activities on Android as opposed to an application, right? So which one do we want to run, right? Let's click blank activity and click Next. Typically on the machine in front of you? Okay. You can still do this while this is happening, right? Just use a previous SDK. So you can go back and relaunch Android Studio and do all this with me, right? You can go back and launch it, right? Okay, so here's my activity name. My activity name normally how it says main activity. That's our default name. We can always change that. But main, think about how we would do Java, right? Java main. This is almost like our driver activity. This activity drives the actual application. You can call this thing whatever you like, right? But all these things are configurable, and we will configure every single one of these options as we go towards, continue to create stuff. I'm going to click Finish, and when I do, it's going to launch my application. It's doing its thing, and then it launches everything inside of our emulator. Okay, so notice that we have our welcome app, right, and we have our project tab, right? Our project tab is where we actually have the app itself, right? So we have our app manifest. Here's the Android manifest, similar to what we saw before on Xcode, right? The only thing is this is the XML version. If I click on, depending on how I click on these options, here's my Java, and here's my resources, right? If I go to layout, and if I go to Main XML activity and double click, right? I have two options, right? It's going to render my option here, right, on the side. Let me just pull this down for you guys to see it. So it says rendering problem, missing styles. This is correct theme chosen for the layout. Don't worry about that. I'm just going to ignore it for now. So here's my app, right? And notice that it's deploying on a Nexus 4 device. I can choose any device that I've kind of created, right? I can also zoom in, right, to the device itself. So I can keep zooming in so I can see what it looks like. So here's my Hello World application. This is what it's going to look like on the device. It's pretty darn small, right? Anything I click on, so this is a control that I've downloaded and drag and drop. Notice that they're also called views, text view, right? Very similar to what we did in iOS. On the right, you have your whole component tree, right, which is equivalent to a hierarchy, right, or outline. So it's your application outline. And notice that I'm also using a relative layout. So what I've got here is I've got a text view that sits inside of a relative layout, right? And that's what this thing is. Okay, cool. So you have two parts to it. You have your UI piece, right? And then you have your main activity. And your main activity ties into the UI, right? One of the things that you're going to notice right off the bat is we have our onCreate method. And one thing we're going to be talking about with Android, for those people who don't remember, is you have the Android development lifecycle, right? And you have a lot of these APIs that kind of trigger, just like we had in iOS. Remember in iOS we had view did load, right? And we waited for the view to load and something happened. In Android it's called onCreate, right? So when your application is created, you can reprogram onCreate to include additional options in here. Now this is all Java, so it's all something that you're going to be familiar with, right? Notice that it's an override, right? And there's also some other stuff. For example, onCreate options menu. Now, if I don't have an options menu, I don't need this. I don't need to override this particular method here. I can kill this method, right? And same thing with on options menu selected. These are events, part of our Android event development lifecycle, and I can choose to use them or not. one of the ones, Android onCreate, I want to definitely use this one, right? So let's just kill these ones, right? And delete them. And if I save this one, right, it says project sync succeeded. Open the messages view to see the errors found. Let's open the messages view to see what the errors are. What's that? You're going to double click on your activity main, on your main. Yeah, on your main activity.java file. So here it is. I have some errors because of the way I've opened up my project, but main activity.java is the one I've got open up right now. And if I save it, that's all saved up. Now, it tells you the errors. It says project succeeded, but there's a bunch of errors. One of the errors I have is I'm trying to resolve my support because I remember it says install repository and sync project, show in file, right? Because I'm a little bit outdated, then you may not see that, which is totally fine. But so that's the one thing. The one thing is your activity, and that's like our view controller in iOS. So you have your iOS view controller. Here in Android, it's called activity, and it's got a Java ending, right? So .java. Okay. There's a couple things. The activity main XML, which we found over here under layout, that's the way the actual activity will look, or our screen will look, and you can simply drag and drop stuff on the left. There's two places to drag and drop it. You can drag and drop it into the component tree, or you can drag and drop it right from in here onto your layout. So for example, I want to drag in and drop a button. Notice how the little smart helper layout comes up, right? Because this is a relative layout. So it creates your constraints just like it does for iOS, but it does it automatically, right? As opposed to trying to figure out how to constrain everything. Okay, so that's one thing it does. On the right, okay, I'm going to pull this little menu out so you can see this stuff, just so we're doing a little bit of an orientation here for today, right? On the right, notice that we have this properties window that is context sensitive, just like we would on iOS when we have, but it's a little bit more, kind of straightforward and intuitive. If I click on Hello World, right, we've got our context sensitive menu for Hello World. If I click on New button, then we have information for the new button. Hey, here's something to note, right? My Hello World, right, is simply called a text view, right? Simply called a text view. If I want to change this up, right, so I don't want to make it so that it says text view, right, it's Hello World. My string is using a Hello World string, by the way, but my text view, like the text view itself, from a properties perspective, I want to rename this thing so that it makes sense for us to use. So new button is a good example of that. If I click on my new button, notice how I have my ID is a text view, right, for my button. So depending on what I choose, I get different options. This is the design view. If you click on text, you also get an XML view, which is similar to what we did in on the Eclipse platform. Take a look. So there's two views here in your XML. One is design, where you can drag and drop stuff, and the other one is XML, the text version. I'll tell you that there's a lot more control when it comes to controlling what's going on here in your XML view than you have, for example, in your drag and drop view. Lots of more control, especially how you can layer things. For example, everything here, if you notice, is inside this relative layout, right? As opposed to how it was with iOS, we didn't see this view necessarily. Any questions so far? Right, this is something that should be pretty straightforward to you. So again, there's three files that we're looking at right now. One of them is the main activity.java file. The other one is the design view, which is your drag and drop stuff in here. And the third one is your text view of the design view, which actually gives you an XML version of what the design would look like, right? So here's my new button. If I want to choose my new button text on the XML view, I can simply just go here and just change the view and change the button to something else. Like for example, click me. There we go, my click me button. And it says my Android ID, take a look, is button. But that doesn't make any sense, right? Because button should be context sensitive, right? So we kind of name this as a proper button. So we'll call this a click me button. Click me button, right? And the same thing goes with my text view. This is kind of like my Hello World label or Hello World text view. So Hello World text view. And that's what I want you guys to do when we work together on this stuff. I want you to change some of this so that it makes sense. Now, if you get errors, right? Here's my layout below, right? Whereas it says layout below my text view. My text view doesn't exist. It's called Hello World text view. That's part of my relative layout. It tells me where I want to lay this stuff out. I got to change these values here as well. Now if I go back to my design view, nothing's changed really, except for my click me. My button doesn't say button anymore. It says click me. I can realign this thing so it's exactly centered underneath my hello world or aligned with it. That's no problem, right? Here's my click me button right now. But on the right, you get everything, all the details, like for example, your ID, which is the click me button, my hello world. If I want to look at my ID for my label, again, I can just scroll down this content sensitive menu here, and I can click on hello world text view and change the ID to something else. I would recommend you always change the ID. Even your relative layout, you can change your relative layout, the name of your relative layout to whatever you want. And it's done right here. If you click all the way down here to the ID piece, you can name your relative layout anything you like. And you should, right? When we start dragging and dropping items, it's just button or whatever it is. All right, so how do I run this thing? I want to try this thing out, right? Well, I have Genymotion launched, and if I click the test button up here, this little button, I've got some errors with my layout, and that's fine. It'll error out. Let's see what it does, right? So I'm going to click on plus, right? And if there's any issues, what it's going to do is it's going to tell me that I can't run or whatever it's going to be. It says grade of build finished, but with one errors, 1 second, 442 milliseconds a moment ago, right? And I can look at my event log here to find out what the problem. Well, what's the problem? And like I still have these issues, this support, and it says build failed. And the reason why it failed is because I don't have my stuff updated. That's what it is, right? Yours should work though. If you actually try this out and if you have Genymotion kind of enabled, then it should totally come up, not a problem. Who likes taking these pictures, eh? Quick. What are the pictures taking? Huh?
I didn't take any pictures.
All right. So, anyone have any luck launching theirs? Because I know you guys, some of you are actually following instructions and actually doing it instead of sitting around watching, right? So maybe some of you can actually go on and try it out. Try it on Android Studio and see if you can do it. It's on the Mac in front of you guys, so you don't have to wait, right?
So what am I? It's indexing stuff right now.
Right.
It's indexing. Generic. Preview all screen sizes. How do I,
Yes. The other thing you can do is here, if you notice inside Android Studio, even though I don't have I've already opened up Android Studio. Notice that I have, if I've set it up properly, I have the SDK Manager icon available on the top. And it'll go back in there and tell me that if there's something installed or if there's stuff that's waiting to install right in here. Right? If they're still installing something or whatever, it'll tell me. All right, let's go back out. I'm just going to close this app out and go back into my configure and go back into my SDK manager to see what's going on, if it's still doing what it's supposed to do. Right? And it says still done loading packages. Let me install 3 more packages here, because that's what it's asked me to do. And I'll accept the license. It's doing its thing. Your computer froze? Did you have any luck, Rich? Did you launch all your stuff yet?
Well, it's probably because I have access.
It's still installing?
No, it's installed and I've added Genymotion, but I haven't added any of the other stuff.
Takes forever. It's not your fault. It's just part of the development environment, the challenges we're going to have. Are you okay there, Tyler? Good? Did you burn?
Windows 11.
Yeah. You weren't burning, right? Huh? Okay. So this is going to do its little thing here, this little dance. I'm going to go back to Android and do this thing one more time, just so you can see it again. So I'm going to go back. In order for me to kick off a new project, again, if I want to start an existing one, I can click Open. And by the way, for those people who have done stuff with me before, try and open up your existing project from Eclipse. You can import it into Android Studio, right? And there's a methodology to do that. If you actually look up online, There's a way to import your old project. Remember, what did we do in Android? So we did a BMI calculator, yeah? If I'm not wrong. You guys can't remember, right?
Oh,
So if you guys remember doing that, we're going to do that. We're going to redo that app a little bit as one of our first apps. We're going to do a little BMI calculator, right, for our first app that we're going to build. Okay, let's try this new thing out. So I'm going to say start a new Android project. Show you this again. My application name, again, I'm going to call it my demo app, right? And we'll make it so that, by the way, we haven't talked about any kind of Git integration or anything like that, which we will next day. So COMP3025, and we're going to call this the lesson 5 demo. So something more serious now. Again, you'd probably want to call it your company domain. You can call it whatever it is. And notice that the package name is automatic. It's the reverse domain namespacing, right? So I'm going to call mine, instead of thomas.example.com, it's going to be Georgian College. Is it .ca? I think it's .ca, right? And it'll rejig the package name with reverse domain namespacing automatically to fit that. Like you can also edit it. If you click edit on the right-hand side here, you can actually edit that package name to make it whatever you like. And usually the way it goes is reverse domain namespacing and then the name of your project, right? Just like we normally have, right? Click next. This time, instead of choosing API 19, I'm going to choose the latest API, which is 23, right? So something that you guys are more used to doing. Now look what it says. It says your app will run on less than 1% of the devices that are active on Google Play Store, right? Because still, a lot of people haven't updated. Like you guys are all kind of early adopters, right? But there's a lot of people who just keep their. Oh, you're on Lollipop? There you go. So most people don't update their devices. So that's why I gave you all those other options, right? Typically, if I look at other ones, like if I look at Lollipop, so let's go, which one do you have, 22 or 21? Okay, if I go to 22, again, it'll tell me the warning down here. What will it be? Like how many devices it'll run. I'm just going previous and back. And it says still less than 1% of the devices are running Lollipop, the version. 21, 9.7% are running 21. If I go to 19, which is where I was at, 49%, 50% of users are still using KitKat. Why? It's stable, baby. It's stable. Huh? You're on KitKat? Yeah. And that's the reason why we do it, because it's just stable, right? It says also help me choose. That's another option. If I says help me choose, it gives you the rankings for all these ones. Take a look, right? So Froyo, right, which is like kind of the oldest one, and Gingerbread, API level 10. That's why I told you to get API level 10. 94% of the time, if you run something if you write something with Gingerbread, it probably will work on any other device, right? That's the thing. But if I write something with Lollipop, as an example, then you don't have a lot of adoption right now, right? At less than 1%. That's how small it is. Does it? Maybe mine's old. Maybe I have to update my distribution, right? Okay, but I'm going to choose the next one. I'm going to choose Marshmallow, right? So the latest version, and go to next. I'm going to still choose, by the way, what you get here, it really depends on your SDK as well. You might get other options in your latest version of Android Studio, right? So I'm going to click blank activity again, click next. I'll leave it at main activity, click finish, and then if everything goes well, it's going to generate my main activity, and this time I have no errors. Notice, I have no errors here at all, right? I don't have a package though on Genymotion, right? So if I go back on my player, I need to kind of shut down my player for a second and go back to Genymotion here and set up a new device, right? Because I don't have a device that's capable of running 6, right? Marshmallow. So let's launch that. So I'm going to make a new device. So add a new device, and it's going to tell me there's going to be some default devices here in Genymotion that'll give you a chance to run, right? So some devices that have already been created, right? So here's some, like a Nexus 6. What phone do you have, Rich? Is it a new phone? Who's got a more recent phone? What phone should I choose, guys? Okay. So they've got the S6 here. They were here, and it's running 6 API 23. Okay, so I'm choosing this one and clicking next. So what Genymotion does is, because Genymotion has we're connected to the cloud when you log into Genymotion, right? They continuously update their devices, so they always pre-configure their AVDs your Android virtual devices ahead of time, right? So you don't have to do the manual conversion yourself. Back when we were using Eclipse, all that was manual, right? You couldn't just choose one in the old way from the list. Click next. And it's going to download my files. It's a bit of download. Like right now, it's 292 megs for this virtual device, right? Which is totally cool. So what that's actually doing is it's going, grabbing those files, and I'm creating a new VM, a new virtual machine for my to match up with your device. So now I'm going to be closer to what you guys got going on, right? Same thing over here. Notice that it's a Nexus 4, right? I'm going to choose a Nexus 6. If I want to get a more a closer device, that's probably going to be the one that I want. I can also add device definition here and download other ones. We'll do that later on next week. Okay. This is still doing its thing. Okay, I'll wait till this downloads. Anyone have any luck? So try and download if you have Genymotion. Now, if for you, the people that are using the virtual device that's part of the VM that I've created, unfortunately for you, you can't make Genymotion work. It won't work for you, and I apologize in advance, but there's nothing I can do on that front. But for me, this is what it would look like. So for future iterations, you can see this, right? So you can see what I have to do.
What do I have to do if Genymotion's not on the toolbar? It says it's installed.
Are you talking about in the? Okay. I was going to give you that answer, but sometimes it takes a reboot too. So I'm downloading my new virtual device, Rich. I'm downloading a Nexus, was a Samsung Galaxy, whatever they said, 6? S6. So it's going to download that skin. All it's doing is downloading the skin and all the features that are built into that device. And that's a really cool thing about Genymotion, right? So it'll take its sweet time to do that. Let's see how far I am downloading that. I'm also downloading my packages, right, for my SDK. My SDK platform is installed, and it's going to download additional packages that need to be updated, like my Google API. That's why KitKat wasn't working, because it needed to be updated, right? I know, it's crazy slow. Yeah, here it's crazy slow. It's slow too. Are you doing this with us, Ari, or what are you doing? No? How come?
Studio took forever to install.
Did you do it now? Are you doing it?
Last time I was.
All right. Peter, you good? Wait for it. Go into your project for me on the left. If you click on the project window. And then when I'm done this, so over here, see how I have my project window up, Peter? I want you to go in here. Notice that my SDK is going to come up, or my API, number 23 on the left. This is what it's rendering. And it's pointing at my main activity. You can switch activities here. If your hello world is too small, right, and you want to change things like your font size and all that stuff, then you can certainly go in here and change that. So here's something. If you wanted to do Git, because one of our things we're going to do with our applications is Git. While I'm waiting for this thing to load, I need to enable my virtual version control integration here in the VCS menu, right? So we're going to hit this again later on. So I'm going to enable version control integration, and I can choose which to associate. I'm always going to associate Git because that's my preferred version. You can also choose other ones, and press OK. And once you do version control integration, you can create, you can do commits and everything else right through your interface, right? So we'll do that later on. Let's see if it's done. Almost. I wanted to show you this so I can show you what it looks like when we launch a new virtual machine for the first time. It's almost done. Okay, good. So now it's going to deploy it. Once it deploys the virtual device, it'll be yet another VM that I can load through Genymotion. Think about Genymotion as your VM loader, if you will. That's all it is. So here's, I'm going to click this, and I'm going to go to my Samsung Galaxy S6, the ones you asked me to download, guys, which is 1440 by 2560, and click Start. Now, for the first time, when you first set up a virtual device with Genymotion, it takes a second for you to start it up. But there you go. It's automatic, right? It's automatic constraints. Well, when you're using relative layout, right? Got it. So there we go. So there's my my virtual device now, right? I'm ready to go, and I want to deploy. So if everything goes well, and if I don't have any errors, right? If I want to deploy this little hello world thing, right? Notice that again, I have a hello world string. This is where it is. Here's my text size, right? I can choose to define a new dimension, right? Or I can put in relative text size in dp, right? So I can say something like, I don't know, 40 dp, right? Which will make it very big, 40 dp, hello world, right? I can also move it around. I can move hello world around and make it center screen, just like we did with our iPhone. There's our iPhone, right? There's the hello world, right? All I've done is move it around. Because we're using relative layout, the constraint's automatic, right? Yeah. And then if I press play, right, if everything goes well, it's going to try and deploy it. And look what it says. It says choose a running device. It detects that I have Genymotion running. And if I press OK, it's going to deploy my stuff on my running device. Now you got to give it a sec to do this. It's doing its deployment dance, right? And there it is, hello world on a Samsung Galaxy S6 equivalent, right?
How many constraints do you have?
0. Yeah, so don't be mad. Don't be mad. I don't want you to compare stuff when it comes to iOS and Android.
Why do we do iOS?
What was that?
Why do we do iOS?
Why do we do iOS? I want you to know iOS. I want you that you can also honestly say in an interview now that I've deployed and made an iOS app calculator and I deployed it on a device, right? That's bragging rights, man. But now we can make some other stuff with Hello World. I'm going to challenge you with Android because you guys know Java. You should all know Java pretty well, right? Right. And so we might build some more interactive stuff, some of your application requirements. And actually, you may have done an app like this for Anju before because I gave her some requirements before to build this, a couple apps I'm going to get you guys to build, right? So this is the one way we can do this. So again, quick and easy. We built our Hello World app in no time. Your startup disk is almost full. Of course it is. I told you I only have 5 gigs left, right? And that's it for today. So let's get back next week. And when we get back, please don't come into class without your tools running, without your tools ready to go. If you're using a device that's remote, like if you're accessing a device from home, then please use TeamViewer or something else to do that. Yes. I will. I'll put it up. I've already recorded it too. It's on YouTube, but I'll also put it up on. It's all on YouTube. Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you next week.